I used to think that love, real love, was the kind of thing that made you glow from the inside out. That when you found your person, your forever, everything in life aligned around that one constant truth. For me, that person was Daniel. For 12 years, I adored him. Not loved, adored. There's a difference. Love feels natural. Adoration. It consumes you. You start to see the person as your anchor, your peace, your reason for every good thing that happens. He was my morning coffee, my laughter after bad days, my favorite story to tell. I never doubted him. Not once, until that day in the car. The day that changed everything. But before I tell you what happened, I want to ask you something. If you've ever trusted someone so much that the thought of losing them felt impossible, I want you to stay till the end. Because this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about rediscovering yourself when the world you built starts to crumble. So please, take a deep breath with me. Like, subscribe, and stay with me until the end, for a story that will remind you why sometimes the biggest heartbreaks are the ones that teach us who we really are. Now, let's go back. It was a Sunday afternoon. The air was calm, the kind of stillness that makes you want to take a slow drive with the windows down. We were going to meet some of his colleagues for lunch. Daniel was driving, and I was sitting in the passenger seat, humming softly to the music playing on the radio. That's when she called. Her name was Lily, one of his co-workers. I had met her once, briefly. A pretty, lively woman in her late 20s. Younger than me by a few years. She worked under Daniel at the firm, and he often praised her for her potential. The call came through his car's Bluetooth system. I remember the way the screen lit up, her name in bold, clear letters. Lily. Daniel reached for the button to answer, but before he could, the call connected automatically. I could hear her voice fill the car, bright and casual. Hey, you left your charger at my place again, she said with a little laugh. My heart froze. It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. The ease, the familiarity, the way her tone wrapped around the word again. Daniel's face went pale. His hand shot toward the console, fumbling to end the call. But for a moment, just a heartbeat, everything in me broke. He stammered something. She meant the office. My charger at the office. But the damage was already done. The rest of that car ride was silent. Not awkward, not cold, just hollow. I looked out the window, pretending to watch the passing trees. Inside, I was replaying every conversation, every late night, every business trip he'd taken. And for the first time in 12 years, I didn't recognize the man sitting beside me. When we arrived at the restaurant, I excused myself before we even reached the table. I went to the restroom, locked myself in a stall, and sat on the toilet seat without saying a word. My reflection in the small metal door handle stared back at me, eyes wide, trembling lips, breathing uneven. That was the moment I realized something I never wanted to believe. Trust isn't broken by proof. It's broken by a single doubt. I didn't confront him right away. Because love makes you want to give someone the benefit of the doubt, even when your soul is screaming. That night, after dinner, I smiled through everything. His laughter felt distant, rehearsed. Every glance between us was like a language I could no longer understand. When we got home, he kissed my forehead and said, "You've been quiet today. Everything okay?" I wanted to scream, to ask, who is she really? But instead I said, "Just tired." He smiled, relieved, and went upstairs to shower. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at his half-empty glass of wine, watching the condensation drip down like tiny cold tears. Later, when he fell asleep, I picked up his phone. My hands shook as I typed her name into the search bar. Lily. There were messages. Not many, but enough. Jokes, memes, voice notes, little inside references that only two people who spoke too often could share. And then there was one message that gutted me completely. "Next time, I'll make sure you don't forget anything at my place." It was from her, and he hadn't replied. But he hadn't deleted it either. I put the phone down, and I realized I wasn't looking for proof anymore. I already knew. He stirred in his sleep, rolling over, his arm reaching for me. I froze. His touch, once warm and grounding, felt foreign now, like something I no longer wanted to belong to. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, counting the quiet seconds between his breaths. The next morning, I made breakfast as usual. Scrambled eggs, toast, black coffee. He came downstairs, kissed my cheek, said, "Morning, sweetheart," and I smiled. Because betrayal doesn't destroy you all at once. It seeps into you slowly, like poison disguised as normalcy. Days went by. I said nothing. I watched, listened. Not because I wanted to catch him, but because I wanted to understand when he stopped being mine. He began working late again, answering calls outside, showering before coming to bed. Tiny changes that could mean nothing, but felt like everything. One evening, as I folded laundry, I found a faint trace of perfume on his shirt. Not mine. Something sweeter, floral, unfamiliar. I pressed the fabric to my face and inhaled deeply, and in that single breath, my world cracked a little more. That night, I sat on the balcony, alone. The moonlight felt sharp against my skin. I thought about the woman he once made me believe I was, his muse, his partner, his best friend, and I thought about who I was now, a woman quietly breaking behind her own smile. I didn't tell anyone. Not my mother, not my friends, because how do you explain the kind of pain that hides behind polite conversations and dinner tables? I kept replaying Lily's voice in my head. "Hey, you left your charger at my place again." It wasn't just a mistake. It was a revelation, the kind that changes how you breathe. Over the next few weeks, I began noticing things I used to overlook. The way he checked his phone when he thought I wasn't watching. The way he smiled when her name appeared on the screen. The small lies disguised as routine. And yet, I stayed silent, because part of me still loved him. Or maybe I loved who I thought he was. One evening, he came home late again, smelling faintly of that same perfume. I asked casually, "Rough day at work?" He nodded, avoiding my eyes. "Yeah, meetings ran long." I wanted to ask, "With who?" But I didn't. Instead, I said, "You must be exhausted." And he smiled. That same smile he used to give me years ago, when everything was real. Later that night, I walked into his office while he was in the shower. His laptop was open, emails on the screen. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. And there it was, an email thread with her. Work-related at first, but then personal. He was helping her look for an apartment closer to the office. He'd even offered to help her move. My throat went dry. It wasn't the cheating that broke me. It was realizing that the version of him I adored never really existed. I closed the laptop and stepped outside. The night air was cold. I walked down the street, not knowing where I was going, only that I couldn't stay in that house for another minute. When I finally stopped, I was sitting on a park bench, barefoot, my heart pounding like a trapped bird. That's when I cried. Not the quiet, cinematic kind of crying. The real kind. The kind that hurts your chest, that makes you gasp for air. I cried until I felt empty, until the numbness replaced the ache. And somewhere between the tears, I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't beg for truth anymore, that I wouldn't chase love that needed to be stolen to exist, that one day I would leave, but not broken. I would leave whole. When I got home that night, he was asleep again, peaceful, unbothered, and for the first time in 12 years, I looked at him and felt nothing. That was the night I started planning my exit. Quietly, carefully, and with every passing day, the woman who once adored him began to disappear, and the woman who would one day walk away started to come alive. You know what's strange about betrayal? It doesn't just break your heart, it rewires your silence. After that night in the park, I wasn't the same. I didn't scream, didn't confront, didn't throw things. I simply stopped trying. I became quiet in all the ways he never noticed. I stopped asking if he'd be home for dinner. Stopped checking his calendar. Stopped fixing his tie before work. My love turned into a mirror, reflecting only what he gave me. And the more I pulled away, the more he began to notice. It started with little things. "Why are you so distant lately? Did I do something wrong? Talk to me. Oh, the irony. For years I had begged him to talk to me. Now, when I had nothing left to say, he finally wanted to listen. I began sleeping on the edge of the bed, cooking only for myself, leaving early for work and coming home late, mimicking his habits, matching his energy. He didn't realize it then, but I was slowly teaching him what it felt like to lose someone who stayed too long. A few weeks passed, and one night, as I was cleaning out the hallway closet, I found something wedged behind the shoe rack, a small, crumpled envelope with my name on it. My stomach tightened as I unfolded it. Inside was a note. Not written by him, but by her. Lily. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even emotional. It was cruelly casual. I didn't mean to leave this behind. He told me you were fine with us being close. You're such an understanding wife. Well, I stared at that line for a long time. You're such an understanding wife. A laugh escaped me. Sharp, bitter, hollow. He had told her that I knew. That I was fine with it. That I understood. I felt the last bit of warmth drain from my chest. That night, I waited for him to come home. I sat on the couch in silence, the letter in my hand, my wedding ring resting beside me on the table. When he walked in, his face was tired, his shirt slightly wrinkled, the faint smell of perfume lingering again. "Hey," he said softly. "You're still up?" I didn't answer. I just slid the letter toward him. He froze. For a few seconds, the world felt painfully still. Then he tried to speak. "It's not what you think." I cut him off. "Don't, please, I wasn't angry." "Not anymore. Anger burns fast and loud. This was colder, heavier, like grief." He started pacing. "She must have left that by accident." "Daniel," I whispered. "You told her I knew." He stopped moving. His lips parted, no words came out. His eyes dropped to the floor, the look of a man who realized he couldn't twist his way out this time. For a long moment, we just stood there facing the ghost of what we used to be. Then I said something that surprised even me. "I'm not here to argue. I just want you to remember this moment, because it's the one where you lose me, not because of her, but because of how small you made my love feel." He tried to speak, but I walked away. That night, I slept in the guest room. He didn't follow. In the morning, I woke up before sunrise. The house was quiet, painfully so. I walked to the mirror and stared at myself. My face looked older, tired, but my eyes, they were sharper, stronger. It was the first time in years I saw a version of myself that wasn't his wife. I made myself coffee, sat on the porch, and watched the sun rise. The world was still turning, and for the first time, I felt like I might start turning with it again. That same day, I went back to my art studio, a room I hadn't entered in almost 5 years. Canvases stood there covered in dust, paints dried in their tubes. Art had always been my escape before marriage. But somewhere between laundry and loyalty, I'd forgotten what peace felt like. I picked up a brush. The first stroke was shaky, the second stronger. By the third, I was crying again, not from pain, but release. Day by day, I began rebuilding the pieces of myself I had abandoned. I started journaling again. I met my old friend Maya for coffee, the one I stopped talking to because Daniel didn't like her. I applied for an art exhibition downtown, and slowly, life began to breathe back into me. Daniel noticed. He'd come home to find me painting, music playing softly, laughter in my voice when I talked on the phone. He started asking where I was going, who I was meeting. I could hear the unease in his tone. One evening, he finally asked, "Are we okay?" I smiled. "We're exactly where we're supposed to be." He frowned, confused. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said quietly, "you're free to chase whatever you've been chasing. And I'm finally free to stop pretending that I'm not hurting." He didn't know how to respond. Days later, he tried to fix things. Flowers, dinners, long talks that came too late. But I wasn't the same woman anymore, because once a woman learns she can survive without you, there's nothing left you can take from her. One night I came home to find him sitting on the stairs waiting. His eyes were red, his hands shaking. "Lily's gone," he said quietly. "She transferred to another branch." I nodded. "Good for her." He looked up, desperate. Don't you even care? I met his gaze, steady, calm, almost kind. Daniel, I said softly, you taught me to stop caring. He broke down then. For the first time, I saw him cry. The kind of raw, broken sob that comes from realizing you destroyed something you thought would wait for you forever. But I didn't hold him. I didn't comfort him. I just stood there, watching the man who once made me believe in forever fall apart under the weight of his own choices. Because sometimes, that's what grace looks like. Not revenge, not anger, just walking away, knowing you didn't have to become cruel to prove you were strong. That night, I packed a small suitcase. My clothes, my sketchbook, my favorite mug, and I left. No grand goodbye, no dramatic music, just quiet footsteps and the sound of the front door closing behind me. Softly, peacefully, finally. As I drove away, the city lights blurred through my tears. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time in a long time, I knew who I was becoming. You know, people think healing is this clean, graceful process. Like one day you just wake up and all the pain you carried suddenly makes sense. But it doesn't. Healing. It's messy. It's slow, and it hurts in ways you can't explain. When I left Daniel, I thought freedom would feel like wings, but it didn't. At first, it felt like falling, like walking barefoot through broken glass, every memory cutting deeper than the last. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, still expecting to hear his car pull into the driveway, or his voice calling my name. And when silence answered instead, I would curl up on my side, clutching my pillow, whispering to myself, "You did the right thing." It's strange, isn't it? How you can love someone so much that even after they've broken you, you still miss the way they made you feel safe. Even when it was a lie. But pain has a way of teaching you truths you'd never learn otherwise. And one of those truths was this. I had built my world around someone who never once saw how beautiful my world could be. So I started building again. But this time, for me, I moved into a small apartment near the art district. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. The walls were white and empty, like a blank canvas waiting for color. Every morning I painted for hours. Every night I worked at a local cafe to pay the bills. It was exhausting, yes, but it was also the most alive I had felt in years. One evening, while I was cleaning brushes in the studio, Maya stopped by. She looked around at my paintings, each one a little braver, a little louder than the last, and smiled. "You've changed," she said softly. I laughed. I had to. The old me would have waited forever for an apology that was never coming. She hugged me, and I remember thinking, maybe peace doesn't come when everything's fixed. Maybe it comes when you stop needing it to be. Months passed. My art was slowly getting noticed. A small gallery owner invited me to display my collection. It wasn't much, but to me, it felt like reclaiming a part of my soul. The night of the exhibition, I stood among strangers, watching them study the colors of my pain. Each painting was a chapter of what I had survived, from heartbreak to rebirth. One of the guests approached me, an elderly woman with kind eyes. She pointed to a painting, a lone woman standing under rain, her face turned toward the light. "This one," she said, "it feels like forgiveness." I smiled faintly. It is, and maybe that's when I realized I had forgiven him, not because he deserved it, but because I did. A few months later, I ran into Daniel again. I was walking out of the gallery after a meeting when I saw him standing across the street. He looked older, tired, like life had humbled him in ways I couldn't have imagined. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he crossed the road, slowly, uncertainly, as if afraid I'd vanish if he came too close. "Hi," he said. His voice was quiet, almost fragile. "Hi," I replied. He smiled faintly. "You look different." "I am," I said simply. He looked around at the gallery behind me. "You did it. You really did it," I nodded. "Yes, I did." Silence lingered, the kind that holds 1,000 unsaid words. Finally, he spoke again. "I've thought about you every day, about what I did, about how I stopped him gently. Daniel, it's okay. He looked confused. It's not okay. I was a coward. I lied. I hurt you in ways. I shook my head. No, it's okay because I'm not carrying it anymore. He blinked, his eyes wet. I don't know how to live with what I did. I sighed softly. Then maybe you start by learning what love really means. Because what we had wasn't love, Daniel. It was dependency dressed as devotion. He looked down, nodding slowly, the truth settling in his chest like a quiet punishment. Then he asked, almost whispering, Do you think we could ever start over? I smiled. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't bitter. It was simply honest. No, Daniel, I said gently, because I've already started over, just not with you. For a moment his face broke, the kind of break you can't hide. Then he smiled sadly. You deserve happiness. I found it, I replied. In the parts of myself I left behind. He nodded, his lips trembling. Goodbye, then. Goodbye. He walked away. And this time, I didn't look back. That night I returned home, made myself tea, and stood by the window watching the rain fall against the glass. Once upon a time, rain had meant sadness to me. Memories, loss, endings. But that night it felt like renewal, like the sky was finally washing away everything I no longer needed. I took off the last thing I'd kept from our marriage, my wedding ring, hidden in a drawer. I held it for a moment, feeling its weight one last time, then placed it in a box labeled Past Lives. And just like that, it was done. In the years that followed, I traveled. I opened my own art studio. I started mentoring young women who had lost themselves in someone else's story. Every time I saw one of them smile again, that quiet, trembling kind of smile that comes after pain, I saw a piece of my younger self healing too. Because that's the thing about betrayal. It's not just about losing someone you love. It's about finding out who you are when the illusion shatters. And when you finally step out of that wreckage, you don't rise the same. You rise softer, wiser, and stronger. Because you learned that peace isn't given by anyone else. It's something you build within yourself, brick by trembling brick. So, if you're listening to me now, if you've ever loved someone who made you doubt your own worth, I want you to know this. You are not broken. You are becoming, and one day you'll wake up, look at your reflection, and realize the woman who once begged to be seen is now the woman who can stand alone, radiant, fearless, and free.